Hello, this is Mike from the RLB Library at the University of Baltimore, and this is the second of 3 videos about how to use Zotero, Citation Management Program. In the first video, we helped you set it up, and in this video, I'm going to show you a little bit about how to get information into it and what you can do with it to sort of store your research. In the third video, we'll be turning that research into a bibliography. So if you followed along in the first video, you should have things all set up. And you have the program installed. This is the program we were working with before. And you should have made a folder too. I made a folder called Dummy. Well, the folder doesn't have anything in it, right? So we need to put some stuff in it to store our research. And the way that works is really simple. So I'm going to open up my web browser. I've already gone to some different sources here. And they're just about random things. So I found something through the library. And I've got an article on the New York Times about current events. Right now, this is the pandemic. And just a video to relax you that I found on YouTube because, boy, aren't we all stressed out right now. So how does this work? Well, if you followed everything along and you've installed the extension, the little picture that you have up in the top corner, right, that I mentioned before, there it is. That's what's been added to your web browser now. So that is how we get information into Zotero. So all you have to do is click on that. And you can tell it which of the folders you want to put it in if you have multiple folders. Remember, mine's dummy. So I'm just going to say, great, I'm done. Perfect. And now if I go back to Zotero, here it is. And you can see that it's pulled over here all of the information it could possibly get about that particular article. This is Zotero's real power, that it gathers all that information for you and it can use it to do citations at the end of the day. It's not all it can do, but we'll come back to that. Just to show you some other things about it, you might notice that if I look at different websites, the picture is different. So the picture I circled before looks like kind of a page, but now the picture, which is again up in the top corner, right? Now it looks a little bit like a newspaper. Well, that's because this is the New York Times. So it's sort of smart enough to know different kinds of sources. So I'm just gonna store that in the dummy folder. Then I'm gonna store the information about this video in the dummy folder too. So now when I go back, there ought to be 3 different sources in there. And there are, great. So let's just point out some other things about this for you. One is that while it's great at the library, right, and finding information from the library's website, if you look here, it's got the whole abstract, all the authors, all the information about the publication. And it did pretty much the same thing on the New York Times. The further afield you go and why you can use it to do anything, different kinds of sources give it more and less trouble, right? So at YouTube here, right, it doesn't quite know what to do with it, right? It says that it's a web page. Well, yeah, but I mean, it's kind of a video. But most importantly, it didn't really get the author, right? And that's really important because you need the author to do citations. So you can always, just to show you, edit these things and type the author's names. I'm not going to go back and look it up, but if something goes wrong, you know, you can type their first name and their last name and add all that information in there. Also, you could add the title if it screwed that up or other kinds of things. So you want to go through and check and make sure that this all worked out correctly, right? Oh, like, look here, it actually didn't get the first name and last name for the New York Times. That's a little surprising. So you'd want to fix all of that. And that's all there is to getting information into Zotero. So we could end the video there, but there's a couple other things that you can do that I think are kind of interesting. So if I go back to my whole library where I've got a lot of stuff because I've used this a lot, there are lots of ways you can sort this, right? You can sort it by who is the author. So if you have a lot of sources in a lot of different folders, it's real easy to find something because this is also searchable, right? So if I knew that I had one by Lawton, I just type Lawton and there it is. In addition to that, though, one of the more useful things you can do is if you pick a certain source out of your list, There are lots of other little options up here for things you can do with those sources. One, you could actually upload an attachment. So for instance, if you had a copy of the file, you could add the file. Or, and this is probably the most useful thing, you can add notes. If I add a new note, right, I'm taking notes in this folder here. So I could say, this folder is for whatever the class is called. I didn't title the folder well. You can delete the notes, of course. But even more interesting is over here, again, with all the information, you can do things that are a little bit more advanced. So if I click on that notes section there, I can add a note about this particular article, Gaming in Virtual Reality. And it could be all manner of things, but it, just let you take notes about what the sources are and why they're useful. So not only is this a great way to organize your research that's really easy to do, but on top of that, it also lets you take notes and store the files themselves. If you, for instance, download the PDFs, you can store them all here, and then they're all waiting for you to go when it's time to actually write the paper. So there's a lot more you can do other than that, but that's enough for now to give you a sense of how do you add stuff, how do you organize it, and what else can it do. So it's a useful program.